Welcome to the final end of the year project. Our group will be completing option 1. Mostafa Al Ghamri will be completing questions 1 and 2. Ismail Safwat, who is me, will be completing questions 3 and 4. And finally, Yusuf Al Dairi will be completing questions 5 and 6. So, without further ado, Mustafa, take it away.
Yeah, this is my biology project question 1. Question 1 is the bodies of plants or animals. What are the different types of specialized cells and how do their structures help them to perform their functions appropriately? First of all, we have the skeletal muscle cell. It contracts to allow other body parts to move. It contains long protein filaments that can slide past each other to shorten the cell. Second of all, we have the red blood cell. It carries oxygen to the tissues, and it contains the protein hemoglobin, which has no nucleus, which helps to carry more oxygen to the cell. Third of all, we have the nerve cell. The nerve cell transmits electrical impulses from one part of the body to another. It has membrane proteins that carry out active transport of sodium and potassium ions to help recharge the cell. And then we have the sperm cell. The sperm cell transfers genes from the male body to the female gamete during sexual reproduction. The sperm cell has a tail which helps it swim to the egg, and also it has the tail has mitochondria ATP energy has ATP energy, which helps it break through the outer membrane of the egg cell. Then we have the phloem cell, which is found in plants. Of transport of sugars. Cells have holes in their cell walls at each to allow sugar to enter. Then we have the xylem cell, which is found in plants. The building block of transport of water and minerals. Cells were strengthened with hard substance and called lesion to withstand changes in pressure of water. Thank you. Number 2. How are nerve cells different from all the other cells? Nerve cells have specialized parts called dendrites and axons. Dendrites they have electrical signals and take it to the body cell, and axons take information away from the body cell. Then what are the differences between hormones and nerves as a method of controlling the body? And these are the 6 examples. Nerves have nerve impulses are transmitted through the neurons, and the responses are localized, and the electrical impulses are the messages in the neurons. But the hormones are transmitted through the blood vessels, and responses are widespread, and hormones are the chemical messengers in the endocrine system. Thank you. And now I will attach the nerve cell under a microscope, and I will indicate which microscope it is. Okay.
Question 3. The 3 reactions involving a reflex arc include sneezing, a reflex known as the pupil reflex, and pulling our hands away from a hot object. The stimulus in sneezing will be the mechanoreceptors in our nose detecting that there is dust or pollen inside our nose. The stimulus in pulling our hands away from a hot object will be the sudden change in temperature in our hands. And finally, the stimulus in the pupil reflex will be the amount of light entering our eyes. The pathway of the nerve impulse when sneezing starts off at the mechanoreceptors, and then it travels through the sensory neurons, then to the relay neurons in the brain, and then to the motor neurons, and finally to the palate and to the tongue. In the pupil reflex, it starts off at the sensory neuron, and then to the relay neuron inside the brain, and then to the motor neuron, and finally to the pupil. And when pulling our hands away from a hot object, it starts off at the sense organs that are the receptors, and then the impulse is carried through the sensory neurons, then to the relay neurons inside the spinal cord, after that to the motor neurons, and finally to the effector, which will be our arm. The organs involved in sneezing are mouth, nose, and brain. The organs involved in the pupil reflex include our eyes and our spinal cord, and the organs involved when pulling our hand away from a hot object include our hand and our arm, as well as the spinal cord. Question 4. The primary stress hormone in our body is cortisol. Cortisol is secreted in the cortex of the adrenal glands. The cortisol helps controlling blood sugar levels as well as blood pressure levels. It regulates metabolism, it reduces inflammation, and it also assists with memory formulation. It is normally released upon waking up in the morning and when working out, as well as when we have acute stress. Adrenaline. Adrenaline is also linked to stress. It is secreted in the medulla of the adrenal glands. It increases heart rate and blood pressure levels, and also air passages dilate, and also it boosts energy supplies. It is usually secreted upon being in a stressful situation after a couple minutes. And finally, we will talk about melatonin. Melatonin is secreted in the pineal gland. Side effects of melatonin include dizziness, irritability, stomach cramps, daytime sleepiness, or maybe even short-time feeling depression. Melatonin is usually secreted at around 9 p.m. Into the blood when the night occurs and the sunlight disappears.
Task 5 and 6, the model. This is an example of the animal cell model, and these are the organelles. Here we have the cell membrane and the vacuole here, and the nucleus, nucleolus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and lysosomes. The first organelle that we have here is the nucleolus, and the nucleolus is the inner part of the nucleus, and its function is to make ribosomes. Then we have here the nucleus, which controls the activities of the cell and contains DNA. We have here the mitochondria, and the function of the mitochondria is to produce ATP for the cell. And these here are lysosomes, which contain hydrolytic enzymes, and so function as part of the recycling system of the cell. And here we have the vacuole, and the vacuole in the animal cell is small, unlike in the plant cell, which is large. And the vacuole stores food and nutrients, and sometimes waste products. And here we have the cytoplasm, which is the jelly fluid in the cell, and it holds up all the organelles, and all chemical reactions happen in it. And here we have the cell membrane. The cell membrane is the outermost layer of the cell, and it chooses what to goes in the cell and what to goes out of the cell. And here we have the Golgi apparatus, which packages proteins for secretion. This is the endoplasmic reticulum, which produces lipids and proteins, and plays a major role in the production and processing and transport of proteins and lipids. We have here the ribosomes, which make protein for the cell. First we have the nucleus, which controls the cell and contains the DNA. Then we have the cell body, which is the spherical part of the neuron, of the neuron that contains the nucleus and connects to the dendrites. And here we have the axon, which carries the nerve impulses away from the cell body. And here we have the axon terminal, which release transmitter substances into a gap called the synaptic cleft between the terminals and the dendrites of the next neuron. And here we have the dendrites, which conduct electrical messages to the neuron cell body for the cell to function. And here we have the myelin sheath, which allows electrical impulses to transmit quickly and efficiently along the nerve cell. And now I'm going to tell you the similarities and differences between the nerve cell and the animal cell. The similarities is that both have cytoplasm, both have mitochondria, both have a nucleus, and both have a cell membrane, and both have a Golgi apparatus, and both have ER. And the differences is that the nerve cells have dendrites, myelin sheath, axon terminates, whilst animal cells don't. And the functions is that animal cells carry out all the processes of the body, including producing and storing energy, making proteins, and replicating the DNA. And nerve cells are electrical excitable cells in the nervous system that only function to transmit information.